Recovered alcoholic, my name is Pat Rogan.
Pat Rogan.
Thanks to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous outlined in this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the program of AA, I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, and for that I'll be forever grateful. AA didn't just save my life, but it gave me a new life.
Amen.
And absolutely love my new life most of the time. I love being sober. I love this room. Yeah, we're going to talk about step 11. And it's funny, I just feel so, even after a few decades of being around here, I just feel so unqualified at times to talk about this step. I just feel like I have so much further to go. But I can't forget how far I've come. And I was just thinking about the Bill Wilson story called The Forgotten Mountain, where he talks about as a child, and if anybody's ever been to the Wilson house, it's pretty cool. The Griffith house is next door, and you stand in Bill's window in his bedroom, and you look out the window, and Bill was looking at Mount Aeolus and dreaming about climbing that mountain. And then he says his aunt came along for his birthday and gave him a plate of fudge. He completely forgot about the mountain and chased that fudge for the next 35 years. Mm-hmm. And that reminds me of me being a teenager and being starting shortstop for my high school baseball team, and finding a bottle of Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. I completely forgot about my baseball career and chased that fudge for the next 20 years. And but Bill talks about overcoming that mountain eventually, and struggling to climb that mountain, and falling down and getting back up and taking some steps backwards and rolling back down the hill a little bit, but getting up and making a little bit of progress, and falling short here and there. And he reminds me and us not to forget to stop once in a while and look back and look down the mountain and see how far we've come. And I'm nowhere near where I want to be, but man, I'm nowhere near that asshole that walked in here. I mean, that guy, I hate that guy. I do not like that guy. I look back, and the 11th step warns us about looking back in morbid reflection, but my God, it's hard not to look back without regret. I blew up some people's lives, man. I was that tornado it talks about in step 9 that just went through lives and just blew them up, and justified my behavior, blaming them and getting absolution through the bottle. And so first thing I want to do is take a look at Tradition 10. And Tradition 10 tells me that I have no opinions on outside issues. Hence, we don't want to bring the AA name into controversy. And so what it warns me about is bringing up religion and politics and anything that would divide us in these rooms. And so I just want you to know that I'm not here to promote any religion, specific religion, although our book suggests that we use what they have to offer, that there may be times when we need what they have to offer. But I don't want any newcomer that's sitting here thinking that we're some kind of religious organization, or that I'm selling some kind of Christianity or Buddhism or Muslim. I'm just not there. But I have utilized a lot of what they have to offer, and I may talk about that in my experience. But I'm one of them guys, I am so careful, even on social media. I'm that guy that I might post something that's spiritual, but there's no religion in it. You'll never see me post a political post. You'll never see me comment on a political post, because the last thing I want to do is prevent somebody from asking me to sponsor them because of my political affiliations or my religious affiliations. I don't want to do that. That divide. They're asking us not to discuss that here. They're asking us not to discuss it out there. They're asking us when we go to dinner not to discuss it, because Tradition 1 says unity is the problem here. That we need to maintain unity. And if I say anything that makes you think that I'm promoting any particular religion or any particular beliefs, I'm not. I'm just sharing my experience. And I needed to put that disclaimer out there because I've struggled spiritually in this program, and I've compensated in other areas, and I think other people they don't struggle spiritually, and they maybe struggle in other areas, but I compensated for my lack of spirituality, if I can use that word, through service. I was a service junkie my first 5 years for sure, but maybe even my first 15. And that doesn't mean I didn't believe in God. I'm not saying that. And look, when I say the word God, I mean whatever you think that is. That's the cool thing about AA. We get to choose our own conception of God, and Bill gives us a lot of leeway there with spirit of the universe, creative intelligence, energy. I mean, pick what you want. It doesn't say create, by the way. It says choose. Choose one. And we get to do that here. We get to, that's why we don't argue here. That's why we're not. And in the forward, Bill states we are not a religious organization. We are not. And I know people laugh at me when I say it, and some people will make fun of me, and some people will tell me I'm full of shit when I say this is a spiritual program, not a religious program. That's what it is. I don't care if anybody doesn't believe that or not. Do some people lean towards religion for help? Yeah, I do. I needed to at some point. I needed more than what I had at that particular time. But my religious background caused me to kind of revolt against that and go against that. I grew up Catholic, and I'm not a Catholic basher. Maybe I'll make amends for sounding like a Catholic basher later in this talk. But I grew up in a church. What I heard was, if you jump through the hoop, you're going to go to the pearly gates, and if you don't, you're going to the fire. Right? And we had this purgatory thing. I guess a halfway house. Yeah. If you weren't good enough to go to the gates and bad enough to burn, you went to halfway. And I don't know. I don't remember, was it act of contrition or something? People used to pray and you got shot up. I don't know how that happened. And I was incapable of jumping through the hoop. I was incapable of perfection. Now, I didn't know that everybody was incapable of perfection. I didn't know that. I thought maybe I was the only one that was falling short. They couldn't live up to the principles. So I was convinced that I was going to the fire. I was convinced of that at an early age. I was a kid that just wanted to fit in. I was a kid that lied in confession. You know what I mean? I left confession with guilt. I didn't get that spiritual cleansing that other people got. What I would do is I'd poll the people around me, like, how many times you lie? Did you steal anything? Did you cheat? I would go through, and then I would go in there and try to be average. And then I'd leave there and kneel down and go, oh man, you just lied to the priest. So as soon as I could, I separated myself. And alcohol allowed me to do that. We talk a lot about the God within. The God within has always been there. Always been there. I think that's one of the miracle paragraphs in this book for me was deep down within every one of us is the fundamental idea of God. And conscience. Ben Tropsky used to call it the soul. Right? The part of you that knows that it knows that it knows. The part of you that knows right from wrong instinctively without anybody having to tell you that was wrong. That was right. I shared the light switch story with you last week, right? Anything that gives you that, that voice that says you should stop and help that person, but you don't necessarily stop and help. You drive by. I heard Marion share that. That voice tells you put the cart back. But we don't want to put the cart back. That's a great example. That litter that you just dropped, that voice that says you should pick that up. You should chase that across the lot. But we may not. Because it's not a big deal. They got people that get paid for that. We'll justify that bullshit with some errant nonsense. That voice that says you should throw that switch away, not return it to Home Depot. That voice. It's always been there. And Garrett used to always say, alcohol would give me permission to violate my own principles and yours, and then give me absolution later. Right? So once I found the drink, it opened up all kind of doors for me. Any door was open for me. It would give me permission, and later on it would give me absolution. And I lived my life for 20 years like that. So when I come in here, I wasn't exactly thinking about going back to church. But I love the fact that you gave me permission to choose my own conception of God, whatever I thought that was. And I prayed for many years to the God of my misunderstanding, you know. And I'll tell you why I came to even do that. Because Camper John at the Fifth Chapter Club, who was the bartender there, who saw me detoxing in the rooms of the Fifth Chapter, said, dude, I don't think you're going to make it through the day. And I went, thanks for the confidence, John. He said, well, here's what you need to do. By the way, they called him Camper John because he lived in a camper. You know, he was either at Denny's in Pompano or Denny's in Deerfield, behind one of those. But Camper John said, you need to get up in the morning and ask God to help you stay sober that day, and then you need to thank him at night, at the end of that day. And I started to walk away, and he said, but I don't think you can make it through the day. He said, you need to ask God to get you through the hour. You need to ask God to get you to lunch. Then you need to ask God to get you to dinner. You ask God to get you home at night rather than stop at the 7-Eleven for a tall boy. You know? And that was a challenge, by the way. My van instinctively drove into the 7-Eleven. Right? I caught myself early in recovery sitting in front of the 7-Eleven going, what are you doing here? God, please get me home. And for the first time in my life, I started putting some days together, which equals faith. Right? I started to believe, I started to be willing to believe that what John was telling me was true. And that was that flimsy reed, right? That was that mustard seed. I've been so into Bishop Barron lately. Bishop Barron I just touched the cloth, just touched the robe, right? Love that line. Oh, I just got chills, right? That lady, she was just wanted to touch the robe. And once she touched the robe, boy, she was in. Once I touched the prayer, I was in. Oh my God, this just might work. This just might work.
Slender threads.
The slender threads, yeah. But it hasn't been an easy road, you know. And I've had to feel the heat to go into the light. You know what I mean? I've had all my spiritual growth has come through pain, and it still does. The sermon this week, and like I said, I'm not promoting any religion or anything. I just happen to love Bishop Barron, just one of my favorite people, one of my favorite communicators. And he talked about today the thorn in the flesh. The thorn in the flesh. What is the thorn in the flesh? What is it that keeps bringing you back to God? What is your demon? What is it? Mine's fear. Mine's fear. The fear will not go away. And I don't think I lack faith. I just think I'm just inherently tormented, you know? And what does that do for me? What does that thorn do for me? It drives me back to God. It's the thorn. Everybody has the thorn. What's your thorn? What is your thorn? Is it some internal condition? Is it some emotional condition? Is it some mental condition? Is it some tragedy that took place in your life? Some abuse that took place in your life? What is it that drives you to your knees? You know, I had to be driven there. I had to be driven there. I had to run out of options. That surrender, I think it's James that says that all spiritual experiences are grounded in tragedy. Right? That tragedy that brought me in here, which it was, I lost everything I loved and everybody that loved me was gone when I walked in here. And that's not necessarily, you don't have to do that to get in here. That's not a requirement for a membership. You don't have to be where I was when you get here. But that was the bedrock of that foundation that was going to lead me to God. To lead me to that power greater than alcohol. That's what I needed. And once I got that flimsy reed, once I just touched the robe that John was talking about, I was in. Like, what do I got to do to get more of that? What do I got to do to stay stopped? I need to stay stopped. That seems like it might work. And that's what those first 5 steps did. They built that foundation, that bedrock being the tragedy that brought me in, that bedrock being the surrender. But the foundation being that willingness to believe, and then later on, this belief becomes the cornerstones, and then faith becomes the keystone that holds this whole structure together that we're going to pass through to freedom that the book talks about in step 5, right? Freedom. Freedom from the bondage of the drink and the drug, right? I mean, that was the miracle that took place here. Ben used to say, we walk through, it says freedom when we walk through, and we turn around and look back, and it says chosen. We get to be chosen. I shared with you a few times here over the last 11 weeks that my epiphany, if you will, came in step 5. God entered my heart in step 5. I became a believer in step 5. And not anything specific. I believed that there was a God. I had faith in something I couldn't see for the first time in my life. Faith in the unseen. I felt it. I couldn't show it to you, but I felt it. It was real. And people that have had that experience know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, you have no clue what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
I'm not just talking about chills. I'm not talking about goosebumps. I'm talking about, I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, you have to feel it. You have to experience it. I talked about it last week, right? Toll talks about walking into the room for the 100th time and seeing it for the first time. Walking outside and looking at the world for 36 years and seeing the world for the first time. That's what I'm talking about. That's crazy to hear if you're new here. But that's what we have to offer here. That's what's possible. I mean, it's grounded in the ABCs. It's grounded in the first 2 steps. It's grounded in tragedy, usually. Surrender. But I want more of that. I shared, I think it was last week or the week before, the first time in my life that I was at peace without a substance in my body. I left that. I did mine with a 5th step. My 5th step with a priest because I don't trust none of you. You're all full of shit. Y'all talk and gossip. I didn't want to pick on anybody in particular, so I said y'all. Not true, but that's the way I saw it. With Denny's sitting there talking about it, that's the way I saw it. My 5th step will be out on this table next week. I figured by law a priest couldn't share it. But I believed. I became a believer that day. I got free that day. The great fact is just nothing less. We have deep and effective spiritual experience. The central fact of my life that day was that God entered my heart in a way which is indeed miraculous, that I never imagined, and commenced to do for me what I couldn't do for myself, and that was stay stop. The obsession was lifted that day. I'm not telling you I haven't thought about it. I think I shared with you. I stubbed my toe. I think Vicodin. I mean, just immediately, boom. That warrants a Vicodin right there.
Or 2.
My second thought's an ibuprofen. That might work too. Still back there in those memory banks, isn't it? Right. That half a bottle of Boone's Farm, that spiritual experience that took place there. Yeah, I still remember that. I still remember that dance that night. I still remember touching that girl for the first time. I still remember being someone I never thought I could be. And God gave me the ability to do that without a drink or a drug in my system. The obsession was lifted. And I wanted more of that, and that's what we get to. We go through the rest of the steps to get more of that, right? So we've been given a design for living that really works. To quote Bill, a design for living that works in tough going even. In 10, 11, and 12, we talked about that last week. In 10 and 11, that design for living on a daily basis, right? Prayer, meditation in the morning, do some readings, set the course, right? Use step 10 to stay on course all day. When we get off course, get back on course. We get in conflict, get out of conflict. These immediate course corrections through the day. And then at night, how well did I do? How well did I do? And we get this design for living that keeps me in the sunlight if I want to work for it. And it warns me that if I don't do this every day, then I'm putting myself in danger. We're careful not to let up. We're careful not to rest on our laurels. We're careful not to rest on yesterday's recovery. That river flowed. I got to make a new commitment today. What am I going to do today to maintain my relationship with that power that has put me into the light? How do I maintain that? Forget yesterday. Yesterday's gone. Well, I went to 3 meetings yesterday. I need to go to one today. Well, that ain't the way it works. It's a new day. That river flowed. Can't let up. I can't let up. I'm either going forward, I'm either progressing or regressing. There's no word called gressing. Right? Yeah. Our next function is to grow. Now, they use the word maintain our recovery in the step 10, but to maintain something that's living means to promote its growth, right? If you're maintaining the building, it's keeping it the same. You maintain your car, it's keeping it like a new condition. But to maintain a flower, to maintain a plant, is to promote its growth. That's our next function. To grow in understanding and effectiveness, to grow in my relationship with God, my understanding of God, and my effectiveness in carrying that message. That is our message. I mean, if you're new here, I hate to disappoint you, but don't drink and go to meetings is not recovery. It's an introduction to the fellowship, and we will support you, but it will not solve your problem. If you're the real deal, it will not solve your problem. I'm evidence of that. I was 90 days not drinking and going to 270 meetings. And I was freaking dying inside. Hanging in there. How you doing? Hanging in there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. One more fucking day. Yeah. 3 meetings today. Called my sponsor 4 times. I'm a winner. Pick up a drink. Who wants that? That's not what I came here for. I wanted freedom. Good start. Don't drink, go to meetings. Good suggestion. Yeah. First step in sobriety is stop drinking. If you're coming here drunk, it ain't gonna work. But you can if you want. It wasn't until I engaged in this program. But it's still about growth. It's still about how am I going to grow? And I think it's my tendency to let up on my spiritual growth, not my service stuff. I love doing service. As much as I'm afraid of speaking, I love helping alcoholics and addicts. That's what we do. That's my life now. I've been chosen for that. I know that. I'm not confused about what God's will is for me. I'm focused on what His will. His will is for me to help another addict and alcoholic. I thought at first when I got here, well, if this is about God, I should go back to church. And I did. They didn't like me. They fired me. But you know what? I'm all in or I'm all out, no matter where I'm at. I became Eucharistic minister. I became an usher. I was the guy, man. If you want anything done, I'm the guy. I got involved in RCIA, right? Then I got in an argument with the guy who runs it. This thing about Jews aren't going to go to heaven unless they go to Christ. I said, I don't know about that. I'm a leader, right? And he said, well, you're fired. So I'm up at the altar. They started passing the chalice of the blood, and the wine. And it was something that they just started, right? And it comes to me, and I'm holding it like a stick of dynamite. I'm like, and I pass it to the lady next to me, and she passes it back. She goes, that's the blood of Christ. I said, that's a glass of wine. I can't drink that. They don't get it. They don't get it.
That's right.
You guys get that. You guys get that. I'm afraid of it. I don't know if that would get me drunk. I don't know. I'm afraid of it. I freaked out. I was up on vacation in Orlando. I don't know what I was, 9 months sober, 8 months sober, something like that. I went on vacation in Orlando, and I got up in the morning, and I was struggling. Spiritually struggling, and I figured, you know what, I did a Bill Wilson. I looked at the church directory, I found this Catholic church, I went to this Catholic church, and it was a Byzantine Catholic church. I had never been to one before, and they soak the bread in the wine and stuff it in your mouth. I'm going back to my chair later. And I think, God ain't gonna get me drunk at church, but it scared me. I'm afraid of it. You follow me? I'm afraid of it. I'm anxious when I'm working for a customer and I'm pulling their liquor out of their cabinet to do the job. It's like dynamite to me. It'll blow up my life. One drink will blow up my life. And no way do I want that. But my spirituality has been revealed over and over through the years. I want to think the first test, after my wife dropped the restraining order and the lawsuits and all that stuff and charges, and we started dating again, we ended up remarried at 2 years. I was 2 years sober. We ended up remarried, and which was great because I had 2 kids together. And what the hell? Maybe I couldn't do this drunk. Maybe I can do it sober. And so I leave the house one morning, and I forgot something. And I came back into the house, and then I had to use the bathroom. So I go to use the bathroom, and I happen to look in the hamper, the clothes hamper, and there's a bag of pot in there. And I think, oh my God, my kid's getting high. My boy. He was 14 at the time, perfect age. And I come out of the bathroom with this, what the hell? Wait till he gets home. This is unacceptable. 14 years old, he's already hitting a pipe. And she says, no, that's mine. I lost. I speak. I'm bitching at my neighbors because I smell the pot coming in my bedroom window. And I'm yelling at my neighbors to stop smoking that shit outside my window. And it's her smoking it in the bathroom, and it's going around the house and in my window. It was the first time that my recovery was really revealed. I don't believe we get tested. I think we get revealed. I'll reveal where you're really at. I was so upset. I jump in my van, I floor it, I smash into the car in the driveway. Now I'm really losing it, right? I step on it, I pull away from the house, and the first thing that comes to mind is you need a drink. I'm a little over 2 years sober. You need a drink. My second thought was, you need to call your sponsor. And my sponsor was unavailable at the time. And so I went to the mall, spent all kind of money. Buying stuff I didn't need. But I didn't drink. Breakthrough or breakdown, right? When the shit hits the fan, we can have a breakthrough or a breakdown. We're going to turn towards the light, or we're going to turn away from the light. Am I going to turn into AA, into recovery, or am I going to turn away from recovery? And it's a choice. We still have that choice. We still have that choice. I still have that choice today. And it'll start with a switch. It'll start with a freaking switch for a $25 freaking switch, where I'll justify taking that bitch, It'll start there. I was about 5 years sober, and like I said, I was into service, man. The Fifth Chapter Club moved out of Deerfield, so we saw a void in Deerfield for recovery. So we opened up a clubhouse in Deerfield to replace the Fifth Chapter Club. Me and Billy G and Carol, and for 5 years, I was like the guy. I signed the lease. I had the checkbook. Right? There were two signatures on the check, but I was the guy. As long as my name's on that lease, I'm going to hold the checkbook. Right? Well, somebody in the group accused me of stealing money out of the checkbook. I was pissed. I was as mad as I've ever been. Here I am doing the right thing, trying to help other people. You're calling me a thief? I hit him with the checkbook. Oh, spiritual Pat comes out right about that time. My son that was here last week, he witnessed that event. He was happy. It was anniversary night or something. He was there, and I left there. Another one of those turning points, right? Am I going to lean in or am I going to lean out? What I learned recently was what I see as rejection is really redirection, right? And I didn't know that at the time. I know that now in the rearview mirror, but I didn't know that. I thought, oh my God, it's over. It's over. Screw this. I get invited to a meeting out in West Boca Boys Club. There are a bunch of old men in Deerfield. Moved to Boca. And I run into a guy who I shared with you guys. I left something out of my fifth step. I couldn't even tell a priest there was something in my fifth step. I couldn't even share with a priest. And Howard shared something almost the same from the podium. And I got to get free. Without that, what I perceive tragedy taking place in Deerfield, I don't meet Howard, and I don't get free from the bondage of that freaking one thing that was haunting me from my fifth step. And Howard became my sponsor for the next 10 years until he passed away. I think I've killed 3 sponsors. I don't think it was my fault.
As far as you know.
I am a lot. Anybody, I was a member of that group for almost 10 years. And I got restless, irritable, and discontent sitting in that group. And anybody ever done that? Anybody ever got sick of their home group? Everybody if that guy shares that dog and ketchup story one more time, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to punch his ass. Everybody shares the same shit every week. Oh, here goes the dog and ketchup story. Here goes the IRS story. And I found myself not wanting to go to my home group. I found myself and I run into Billy and I tell Billy I can't stand this meeting anymore. I love these guys. But I just can't do this anymore. You need to pray on it. Now here's where I start to move towards prayer meditation, right? This is like my first time. Now I'm not saying I thank you God for my sobriety, get up in the morning, please God keep me sober today, do a couple readings, move on, right? But it's the first time I ever prayed for something specific. What is your will for me? And Billy introduces me to the prayer of Jabez, right? He says, you need to read this prayer every night, right? And the short version is, bless me, protect me, and expand my territory. If you want to read the whole thing, go check it out. It's a really good prayer, right? But I love it. And so I start reading this prayer, I'm saying this prayer constantly, over and over again. What's your will for me, God? And I get a call from the Hollywood Happy Hour. It says, we need you to come down here and do a big book study for us. And I said, yeah, what night? They said, Wednesday night. Oh, that's my home group night. Can't do that. And I start telling Billy. Billy says, dude, your prayers were just answered. You missed it. Like they just invited you to the Hollywood Happy Hour. Go do the Hollywood Happy Hour for a while. Maybe you'll go back to your home group after that. So I tell my sponsor, I'm going to go do this Hollywood Happy Hour big book meeting. And then I'll be back in 12 weeks. I don't know what year that was. It's in the late 90s. It was in the early 2000s, somewhere 2004, 2003. So I haven't been back yet. I went back to give a medallion to one of my guys that goes to that meeting still. But let me tell you what happens from that redirection. Right? I run into a guy there. I start taking him through the steps. Brian and I hook up again. Brian had been out of town for, a couple of years. So Brian and I hook up again, my original sponsor. And Brian's chairing the meeting up at Zion Lutheran in Deerfield. And Brian asked me to come up and speak for him on a Saturday night. So I go up there and I speak on a Saturday night. And there's this guy, Terrence, that's in a local halfway house up the street, right, from there. And Terrence hears my story and asks me to sponsor him after me. All Terrence heard was I remarried my ex-wife, right? And he wanted his wife back, right? So he asked me to sponsor him. He said, I want what you have. I said, you want your ex-wife back. So we start doing a big book study in his apartment at this halfway house, right? Well, Bill K comes in, Tim R comes in. We start, the meeting gets too big for the room. We have to go down to the weight room downstairs. And we move down to the weight room, it gets too big for the weight room. And then at that time, they expanded. They opened up a little restaurant in the corner. They opened up a couple offices. So we got 2 office spaces. We start doing a meeting there. We start calling it the Deerfield Beach Study Group. Central Fact started there. 11-step meeting started there. And then all of a sudden, we have to find a new place because he's going to use some of the rooms for something different. And it ends up the street at Zion Lutheran. It's my home group today. It started in 2005. There's anywhere from 75 to 100 people there every Monday night, But from that, we start to back to basics. We start to buy the book beginners meeting. We start taking people through the steps. I mean, it's just amazing what happens when I don't focus on the rejection and I concentrate on the redirection. Now, I don't know how this prayer thing works. I don't know whether prayer actually changes things or prayer changes me and my attitude towards things. I don't care. You know, I stopped analyzing all that. All I know is that when I pray, things change. That's all I know. And I don't care whether it's me that changes or the circumstances change. I really don't. Whether it allows me to accept circumstances for what they are or whether circumstances change because my attitude changed. But I know that my perception and my attitude change when I pray. Now, the 11th step talks about a little more than that. The 11th step is focused on prayer and meditation for one thing only. And that's the knowledge of his will for me and the power to carry that out. That's all the 11th step is. What is your will for me? And give me the power to carry that out. Petitioning is a different story. And there's nothing wrong with petitioning. There's nothing wrong with praying for somebody to get well, sick person to get well, praying for a better job, praying for a relationship. I mean, just because you said the prayer and now you've met some girl at the bus stop does not mean that it was meant to be. You know, you were in treatment together too. You know, I've heard that. You know. But how do I improve my relationship with God? Was it me? That's the real alcoholic right there, right? There's about 100 people sitting here, and one leaves. What did I say? Yeah. Where was I?
Oh, Patrick, you're fine.
So I'm 15 years sober, and my wife wants a divorce. That was a shock. That threw me for a loop. She didn't like me sober or drunk. Let me tell you something, and I get it. She's a normie. She had 10 years of total excess and dysfunction. And then almost 15 years of total abstinence and all AA. So it was all bars and drinking to all AA and not drinking. And she's a normie. Right? And what we had in common for 15 years is 2 boys. And look, my sponsor, when I found out she was smoking pot, says none of your business. She's not one of us. What do you care? Set a boundary, someone. Set a boundary. Ask her not to do it in front of you. You know? Ask her not to do it in the house. And she did. She respected that. But she didn't want to do this. She was just not one more gratitude dinner for her. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to a meeting Saturday. I'm not going to the meeting Saturday night anymore. You know? And that's me. I'm all in. You know? I don't look, I'm never going to profess that I know anything about balance. Because I don't. I'm all in or I'm all out. I mean, that's just my deal. You know, and if you're not all in with me, then I can't help you. I'm sorry. It's not gonna work out. You know. But I was floored. You know, that thought that I'm a loser, that thought that I can't even do this, I can't even maintain a relationship sober. It was a blow to my ego. And I was lost. I was absolutely lost for a period of time. And I'm driving up and down there. I want to go to the mountains of Pennsylvania and get a cabin in the middle of Cook's Forest, you know, and live with the animals. That's what I want to do, you know. I'm sick of people. I hate people. I don't want people anymore. I want dogs. I want dogs and deer and bear. You know, that's what I want. You know, I want to be a hermit. I want to go live in the woods. And that's what I'm contemplating, running. I'm contemplating running. I don't want to drink, but I want to run. I don't want to do this anymore. Life is difficult, right? First words in a book, The Road Less Traveled. Life is difficult. So I get a call from Billy G. And if anybody wonders why they get random texts from me during the day, or I call them randomly, this is why. Because Billy said to me, and I hadn't talked to Billy in a couple years. Billy said, "You were on my heart today. What's going on?" So when somebody comes on my heart, they get a text. or they get a how's it going, or happy Friday, right? And because Billy did that for me. And I said, I'm fine. And he goes, no, there's a reason why you came on my heart. I know there's something going on. And I said, yeah. And I told him what's going on. He says, well, I'm going to come pick you up. I'm going to take you to a meeting tonight. I said, it's all right. He said, yeah, we're going to go see Russell. I don't know. And I've told Russell this story. I said, no, we're not going to see Russell. I said, he's that tradition violator. He's that Jesus freak. He's that God squad. And, well, I don't care whether you want to go or not. We're picking you up. We're taking you there. Right? And they take me down. I think it's a Little River or something, the one in Miami. Yep. And Russell's doing a step series there. And Russell starts the meeting like this. If you're a newcomer, you might want to go to a different meeting. I'm here for the guy who's 15 to 20 years sober, dying inside. And I fell apart. Oh, my God. He's talking to me. Right? Now, knowing Russell like I know him now, he starts a lot of meetings like that. But, of course, it was about me, And his message was, maybe you need more. Maybe you need more than this. Right? Our book suggests that we use what religious people have to offer. Our book says the 12 and 12 talks about this treasure trove of information that's out there, spiritual information and readings that are out there. That maybe you need more than what this has. Maybe pages 83 through 88 aren't working for you anymore, and maybe you need more. Maybe that morning prayer and that daily spot check and that nightly inventory isn't enough. And he had me thinking, maybe I need more. Maybe you should reach out. So Pete comes down to speak at our home group when it was at the halfway house. I don't know if Pete remembers this or not, but we go to Frankie and Johnny's, I think it is, the restaurant across the street. Me, him, and Art were sitting there. And I'm having a philosophical debate with Pete. Well, he's not having a debate about anything. I'm just, like, people raising from the dead and virgins having babies and shit like that, And Pete looks at me, he doesn't say a word the whole time I'm ranting, right? And he looks at me and says, did you ever think you'd be sober for 15 years? And I said, no. He said, then anything's possible. Amen. And he shut me up. And we get out to the front door and he looks at me and he said, I don't know if you remember this, and maybe my truth's different than what you remember, but what I remember is him saying is maybe you should go back to the religion of your childhood and leave for a good reason. And he got me thinking, why did I leave? Why did I leave the religion of my childhood? And it dawned on me, because you can't live up to their principles. Because you're a scumbag. And it was Saturday night, and the next morning I went back to church. And like I said, I'm not promoting church, I'm just sharing my experience with you. And I sat in that pew, and I was hurting. I was really hurt. And the prayer was, if you're real, show me now. Because I am dying inside. And I had an experience in that church. It's another one of those, I can't explain it. I resigned from the debating society that day. I don't care if virgins can have babies. I don't care if people raise from the dead. All I know is that my willingness to believe caused me to have an epiphany in that church. Right? And I got free. And what dawns on me is, why would you want to be with somebody that doesn't want to be with you? It's too simple, right? Like, let her go. You'll be fine. And what comes on my heart is, you need to ask Garrett M. to sponsor you. And Garrett was another God Squad guy. And I met Garrett the next day, and at Bonefish Max, I'll never forget it. And I said, Garrett, you scare the shit out of me, but I need what you have. And Garrett sponsored me from that day till the day of his death. About 4 years ago now, I guess it is. Rejection or redirection? My life was redirected. Garrett, we did a timeline, look back at my childhood. Why can't you have healthy relationships 15 years sober? That's a good question. That was a good question. I had to do some digging and figure out, are you still a taker, Pat? You still needy? You still need validation from someone else to be happy? Are you a giver? No way. I was a taker. I was an emotional bank robber. You know. And I spent 2 years by myself. Right? Not by my suggestion, but you know, get right with God, Pat, so you have something to give. You know, and I spent 2 years getting okay up by myself. Okay, first time in my life that I wasn't dependent on a relationship to be happy. Because, man, I was willing to settle for dysfunction rather than be alone. Am I the only one here? Yeah. I'll take good enough. I'll take crazy, because being alone really sucks. Yeah. I got okay being alone. And then the short version of the rest of that story is the right person was put in my life. Amen. You know, when I wasn't looking. And I wasn't looking to date anybody. You know, somebody was put in my life. And I'll share this with you because it was the first time in my life I started a relationship like this. It'll sound a little bit odd, but our first date was at Bubba Gump's in Fort Lauderdale. And I sat across the table from my wife. Well, she's my wife today. And I said, can we take sex off the table? And she looked at me like, sure, you know. And we actually got to know somebody. I actually got to know somebody before I slept with them. Because my idea of a relationship was, if you will sleep with me, I will marry you. And then we'll figure this out. Right? Every relationship I ever had was based on, will you sleep with me? This was the first time in my life I got to know somebody, and she got to know me before we actually fell in love. What a difference a relationship is when you start becoming friends first, and then it leads to that down the road. That's a whole different game, man. It's a whole different relationship. And my only job, is to make her happy. That's it. I don't need anything, and she don't need anything from me, by the way. All we do is live to make each other happy. I am not dependent on that relationship, and neither is she. We want to be together. We don't need to be together. That's God. That's not me. That's God working in my life. And look, I've come to try to quiet the I've used Buddhist meditations. I love the mantras. I love the guided meditations. You know, I do all kinds. I love sitting at the ocean, getting in tune with the waves. I love sitting on my back porch, just getting in tune with the movement of the tree branches and just stopping time sometimes. I love that. But I want to tell you something. I depend on prayer and meditation, as the 12 and 12 says, like I do air, food, and water. Right? There's food for the body and there's food for the soul. And without working on that food for the soul, I'm a dead man. You know, if nothing else, I'm hanging in there. You know, and I don't want that life. You know, my forehead unwrinkled, and I don't want to wrinkle that shit back up. You see them guys that walking with the wrinkled ass forehead. You know, how you doing? Fine. I know I'm running out of time. All right, thanks for letting me be.